Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce. The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Nestled in a classic New England setting amid 200-year-old elm trees and charming colonial homes, stately sea captains' homes, and charming Cape Cod salt boxes, Shoreway Acres is a graceful blend of Cape Cod's past and present. Shoreway Acres, proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television.
Green Harbor Waterfront Lodging is nestled in a woodland setting on a picturesque ocean inlet. Green Harbor offers a family waterfront vacation. Enjoy our private boating beach with dock, rowboats, and paddle boats, oversized heated outdoor pool, and kiddie pool. Relax in our waterfront and beachside accommodations. 548-4747 or gogreenharbor.com. People think that a locally owned and operated appliance store may not offer what they need. Actually, we have trained and dedicated sales associates, expert delivery and installation, professional repair service, and personal customer service. Plus, we have access to a huge local warehouse with over 6,000 models in stock. Crane Appliance. We call the Cape and Islands home. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
The Quarterdeck Restaurant, located on Main Street in the heart of Falmouth, specializing in fresh local seafood and other classic American cuisine, featuring a full bar with friendly staff. And the Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, located in North Falmouth just off Nathan Ellis Highway, featuring catering services with 2 full event rooms serving up classic Italian cuisine. The Quarterdeck Restaurant and Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, we're here to serve all our friends in Falmouth.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, do you have anything for recognition in the new year?
Yes, I do. A couple of things tonight. I'd like to share my thanks to the people that have initiated the YMCA in Falmouth. The original group was Falmouth Wants a Y and Falmouth Aquatics, and they've teamed up and they've been working together for years. And they finally have a purchase and sale agreement, which was in the paper last week. So I think that's pretty exciting, and my thanks to them. And the second thing is thanks to Jeff Smith for 29 years of service with the Falmouth Police. Reached the rank of captain. I hoped someday he would hang in and be chief, but I guess it was a little too far off of a goal for him, and he was ready to go. But what a good guy he is, and I've known Jeff for a long time, and he's really a quality guy, so we're gonna really miss him. So congratulations to him on his retirement.
Yeah, thank you. I know that the chief who's here tonight, I know he, you know, as appropriately as possible, pushed back on that one because Jeff has just been such a huge part of that police department for a really long time, and such a steward and ambassador in the community. He was always at so many of the community events that went on. Really just somebody who was so approachable, and exactly kind of what we hope our police officers, and we know our officers are in this town, somebody that you could just go up to and really feel that you could have a conversation with him. So he will definitely be missed, although it is definitely a well-deserved retirement, and he does not look like he could have served for that long, and I bet he's just gonna start looking younger as he has a little bit of time to relax with his family.
I could also add a recognition of Lori McNee, who is retiring from the North Falmouth Public Library as the representative to the library trustees. I just wanted to pass that on. There was a ceremony for her, I believe, Friday night that I know I could not make, and I just wanted to make sure that she was acknowledged for the amount of work she had done for the community and for the library specifically.
Good point, thank you.
Good point. Great, anything else? So announcements. So this board is going to, we've nailed down a date and a location. So on January 21st at the Falmouth High School, we are going to have a community forum around sort of entire issue of, you know, looking at where a new fire station might be placed, really talking about the new staffing that is coming into place in July, and all of the issues associated around this topic that this board is putting together a committee to take a look at some of this. And we really want to kick off this process with a community forum to hear from folks, to share some information. It's a, you know, really a complex issue that, and I know lots of people are here from West Falmouth. The focus has kind of been on West Falmouth, but this is really going to be a community-wide conversation. Certainly the building of a new fire station is a community undertaking, and so we want to make sure that we have just a really strong start to this this ongoing discussion. Along those, so it'll be January 21st at 7
Yes, 7 p.m.
at Falmouth High School. We thank you, Superintendent is here today. Thank you to the school department for opening up that facility to us. We want to make sure we have enough space. We know it'll be well attended. We didn't want, although we love the Herman Room, that just doesn't hold as many people as I think will want to be there to share their thoughts and concerns. So it'll be at the Falmouth High School. And along the lines, we had started our community advisory group about the issue of a new fire station. We had 5 applicants. And so initially we had said we wanted to have a 9,
actually.
Excuse me, a 9-member
Correct.
committee. So just so that everyone knows, we are going to be advertising again, because we really do believe we need 9 individuals to kind of weigh in on this conversation. So folks in this room who are interested, people who are watching, I understand everybody's time is really limited, and we are asking a lot for people to kind of be on a committee like this, but it's very important to have a broad input from across the town of Falmouth, and we had an excellent experience with this around the Route 28 project, and so we hope to kind of duplicate that and have that for this important undertaking. So we really are going to need at least four more people to step up and put their name in, and then we can do interviews. So if anyone is listening tonight, there's still an opportunity for that. And that'll be advertised in the Enterprise this Friday again, just to
Correct.
remind people what the mission is and what we're looking for.
Do we need to declare a new deadline for this next round of the 17th of January?
Probably.
That
'cause
would be helpful,
It needs to be
yes.
in for whatever Diane posts, so. Does that sound good for folks for the?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know one person who's going to apply who tried to get the application online, but I guess it's probably gone because the time has come and gone.
Might be because of the time
For
expired.
that reason, yes.
So it'll be back up again. So I have a motion for the 17th of January as the next deadline.
Second?
All those in favor?
I-
And again, the goal is to start this process as soon as possible. So folks, don't delay, put your applications in, because we really want to get this group put together, so.
Can I just reiterate, this is a Falmouth-wide issue. If there is firemen that go out from one station, it affects the entire town, and the placement of firefighters is something that everyone should be involved in, because it's going to affect your house, your neighborhood. So please, we're very interested in comments, and we really want as much input as we possibly can. So thanks to everyone who's applied, and we look forward to more.
Thank you. Public comment. I just want to be clear, because sometimes people are confused about the agenda. Our agenda item that I just announced is about a community forum. It's not about West Falmouth in particular. So if people are here to make public comments about the issue around West Falmouth Fire Station, please feel free to do so, because it's really it's separate from the issue that we just announced, okay? So for public comment, just a reminder, it's a 2-minute period. Please come up, introduce yourself, and I will have Mr. Jones keeping track of the time. Because it's public comment, we can't respond back to you. So if you ask us any questions, we're not ignoring you, but we can't answer those, okay? So anyone for public comment? Yep, come on up, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Alden Cook. I live in West Falmouth. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic after 31 years in Falmouth. Concerning the West Falmouth Fire Station issue, if and when Station 4 in West Falmouth closes, it will never reopen. 4 to 6 minute response times are the internationally recognized standards for fire and EMS response. Without the West Falmouth Station, response times to this area have been measured to be 8 to 12 minutes to parts of the village from either the North Falmouth Station or the headquarters station. 4 fire stations cannot provide safe fire and rescue response times to all the villages of Falmouth. There are currently no relocation plans for stations 3 and 4. Closing West Falmouth without a relocation plan for a combined North and West Falmouth station at a mutually advantageous site is dangerous and risks the safety of human life for these communities. The duty of the town government and its administration is to plan for proper fire and EMS protection for the community, then ask for the citizens' support, both financially and administratively. No plans were brought forth at the October meeting for fire and EMS protection for our community, only the flat statement that the West Falmouth Fire Station will close July 1st, 2020. The citizens of this community are happy to help and give input for adequate EMS and fire protection. We must remain alert, however, to ensure this protection remains in place and is improved. We were told that the firefighters union is at fault for the planned closure of the West Falmouth Station. This is not so. The town has signed an agreement with the firefighters union to adequately staff each piece of fire apparatus. So let's get it done. An immediate investigation of SAFER grants, i.e. staffing for adequate fire and emergency response through FEMA, should commence. This town has never applied for these grants. This is an excellent method to increase personnel in fire departments. Many cities and towns across America are using this method to increase manpower, more than a few of which are here on Cape Cod. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mark?
Yep, Mark, come on up. Sorry, I can't see you in the back.
Mark Finneran. I have a couple issues. I have an issue that I consider unresolved. I wasn't here last week, but I did listened to your explanation of the comment period, and I find that totally unacceptable. You stated that you're not allow anyone to use someone's name or speak in this room without the person being in the room. Firstly, the person doesn't have a right to comment anyway in this comment period by the rules. And secondly, that's preposterous. There's 31,000 people in this town. You suppose that 31,000 people are going to be in this room if I have something to say? But I've not spoken about this for about a month in deference to the people from West Falmouth and the problem with the fire station. And we can spar about that at a different date. I just want to stress the same thing these people have been trying to stress. This is a very important issue. It has been for a long time. I've spoken on this anytime that it came up. It's an issue. Every election I've spoken about it. And to think that you're going to deal with an issue where we don't have enough coverage by reducing the number of spots that we operate from, therefore the response times, is totally preposterous. And I support these people 1,000%. And as I say, I have another issue, but we can spar at a different point in time because it's not as important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Great, thank you. Okay, under summary of action, administrative orders, vote to authorize letter of support for Buzzards Bay Coalition application to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection for a grant to replace 30 conventional moorings in West Falmouth Harbor with conservation moorings designed to reduce impact on eelgrass. I think everybody looked at the letter. This is time sensitive because the deadline is actually tomorrow. So,
I move approval.
thank you. Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. And I'm just gonna skip ahead from the budget just to do the renewals while folks are heading out, if that's okay. I have renewal of common victual license Falmouth Hospital Cafeteria, 100 Terhune Drive, and Devour, 352 Main Street.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and maybe we'll just do the minutes as people are coming in. Executive session, December 16th, 2019.
We had two different sessions, right?
Yes.
So I move approval of the
The first session.
package one.
Okay,
Second.
okay, and
And not release.
correct, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
I also move approval of the packet two and not release.
okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, perfect. Julian, we are going to.
Return.
Oh. No, it can never be that easy.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, you almost got that by in the new year. Excellent, we have the presentation of our proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. Julian, were you going to start that off and then
Yes,
Jennifer?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you're well aware from your experience, the first formal business meeting of the Board of Selectmen in January is historically the presentation of the proposed annual appropriations budget brought forward as per the town charter to the Board of Selectmen by me as town manager, working with the department heads throughout the town. And I want to acknowledge, take a moment if I might, Madam Chair, and thank and acknowledge all the department heads for being in attendance here tonight as an indication of their support for the process and willingness to answer questions that the board may have regarding this very important matter. They have spent many, many hours in deliberations on presentation and proposals for their respective budgets going back to late last summer and extending into the fall. And it is a very important and time-consuming process which ultimately delivers basic services to the town. So thank you to my colleagues for your seriousness, your diligence, and your conscientious expenditure of those same funds in behalf of the town and its taxpayers. Having said that, Madam Chair, you and members of the board have received a copy of the proposed fiscal year 2021 appropriations budget. It is a proposed document, of course, coming to you as per the town charter. As per your normal operations, you listen to a presentation, ask whatever questions you may have, take it under advisement, and give consideration at your subsequent meeting, which will be next Monday, January 13th, for adopting the budget and transmitting it to the Finance Committee. The reason for that expedited process is, again, the charter ordains that needs to go to the Finance Committee by the middle of January. So that requires that you would need to act 1 week hence. And that is the process that we have going forward. And you have copies, both hard copy and digital. We're also joined by some members of the Finance Committee, and we welcome their attendance and participation, and we look forward to our hands-on work with them. Myself, Finance Director Jennifer Mullen, Jennifer Petit last year at this time, now Jennifer Mullen, for the FY21 budget. And we work closely, obviously, with the Finance Committee and look forward to their thoughts and input and a considerable deliberation going forward and preparing for ultimately for the April town meeting, which incredibly is, schedule-wise, is just around the corner. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I will defer to Finance Director Jennifer Mullen for a brief PowerPoint presentation summarizing this proposal.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me this evening. I just want to thank all the department heads and particularly my department, the support that I've had we've all put the budget together. It was definitely a concerted effort as we have changed payroll software and also been in the middle of a refinancing. Special thanks goes out to Ann Bastille, who really just really makes it happen, and Vicki, Tricia, and Patty as well, because they put up with me as we put this together. And so I really thank them, because without the support of the finance department, this it wouldn't be here. So thank you very much.
And I'll just add, that's, this is happening on top of all the other things that have to go on every day in our town. So I hope people understand it as a large undertaking for a lot of our staff here, so.
Thank you. All right, let's see if I can, oh, I did it. All right.
Peter's not here, so.
I know, because I'm like, Peter, can you help me? And thank you also for the support of, obviously, Julian and Peter, too, through this whole process. So revenues and expenses. I say this every year. I say it at every town meeting. We have reoccurring revenues for reoccurring expenses. This is the operating budget. This is where your reoccurring revenues are. Our revenues are made up from 4 major sources: our property taxes, state aid, estimated local receipts, and other available funds, your special revenue and your trust funds. For a quick educational, the one-time revenues fund one-time expenses. We usually see that in November with our capital plan or major capital projects, and that's free cash and reserves. Revenue detail, we have a revenue policy. The Board of Selectmen has an overall financial policy. They voted in 2017, and every year they vote the budget policy in September that really charges us with how we want to approach the next fiscal year's budget. The property taxes are your major source of revenue to support the budget at 74%, and this is with limits. It limits the increases are due to Proposition 2.5. So really, the only taxes we can raise without going to the voters are 2.5%. In addition to that, we have a new growth component. And then we have our estimated local receipts. And what does that mean? That's your motor vehicle excise, your hotel, motel, and meals tax, your departmental revenue, your water and sewer revenue, your beach parking revenue, licenses and permits, your building permits, ambulance, special assessments, they've increased, due to the sewer, the betterments, and investment income, which actually has increased too pretty well over the last couple of years. So in this year's budget, we've increased our estimated local receipts about $1 million. Now that includes a forecast of $300,000 in hotel motel tax due to the 1% increase that the Board of Selectmen voted in town meeting supported last year. Now that goes into effect January 1st, 2020. And so we've been able to project that out for the next year. And an additional $250,000 due to the water revenues increase, which would support the debt service for the water mains on Main Street. Right now, it's premature to provide a short-term rental tax estimate. That was effective last July. Our receipts are up a little bit from the first quarter in the summer of this past summer to the summer before. And so we really want to get a full year before we can look at that. And also, we've had other increases to offset some additional positions. So the FY 2021 balanced budget it's balanced on a projection of 23.1 million in estimated local receipts, and there's a steady, consistent growth trend in the last 5 years. Now, in your budget book, there's a budget review, and I know that Julian did send that out with, separately, but electronically, and it's in all the budget books. And it does calculate your property tax levy, and it tells you exactly what our estimated receipts. The budget is 250 pages, and it gives you a lot of detail on how we've arrived at these projections and some history, and it really explains what each, revenue source is. So you can see in the last 5 years, the blue is your estimated, what we balanced the budget on, and then the, say it's kind of like a mustard color, is your actual receipts. Now in FY 2019, you can see that our actual receipts were really high. $1 million of that was from a rebate program, a drug rebate program that we put into the Health Stabilization Fund. So you can see the growth in the last few years. Our other available funds, we have our parking meter funds, steamship and other embarkation fees, and these are other revenue sources that we vote every year, and they support, parts of the budget, public safety, wetlands and waterways, energy receipts, the golf revenues. This is the first year for our golf revenues. I think you've all heard me talk about it over the last probably 5 years. This is the year we're supporting $200,000 in debt service payment that the golf lease doesn't support. So we bring in about $400,000 a year. The debt service is about $600,000, and we knew that was going to hit the general fund, so we're able to plan for that.
Can you just remind me how many more years we have for that?
2035.
Okay, thank you.
And then community preservation. This is the first year also. So the debt for the community preservation, which was previously the land bank, is probably a little over $1 million. But the Community Preservation Committee has voted every year to take some of that money and put it into a reserve account, so they would have the debt in that reserve account to pay off the debt. So we can't pay off the debt early, but we still will transfer the money in from community preservation to pay the debt. It's just coming from the reserves that's already in there, not from estimated revenues for the next year. And bond premiums, they have significantly decreased due to the refinancing, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the refinancing that we just did, because it really does affect this budget, in debt stabilization. Property taxes, we have the 2.5% levy capacity and an estimated new growth of 700,000. So to talk a little bit about debt, because it did change a little bit, well, a lot actually. So in the debt policy, excluded debt and capital exclusions will be issued in a manner that stabilizes the tax levy over a number of years. The finance director will maintain a financing plan that calculates the current and future debt capacity. So in my financing plan for debt, it's when we see the graph that I present maybe once every 2 or 3 years, and you can see the debt drop off. And I'll bring that up and I'll go back. I'll just show it to you. It's right here. So you can, as you can see, we always want, I don't think I have a red dot.
The mouse can.
Can the mouse do it?
Yeah, just use it. Won't be a dot, but you can use it as a
Oh, there we
pointer.
go. Okay, thank you. So we always want to spend around this much amount in debt in order to keep it steady. In 2024, we'll have a significant drop-off, and that's probably where we'll talk about more wastewater projects and other capital projects that might be coming down the pike, if you will. So I always want to make sure we allocate this amount in debt, so we're not spiking the tax levy and we're not significantly dropping the tax levy, and it gives us an appetite for new projects. Now in here you can see in the future we do have, we've talked about this, I do have a number for the fire station. We have incorporated the athletic field, the senior center, and some more CWMP projects, and you can see that's right there in these years as you look at the graph. The original financing, let me go back for a minute. So the original financing plan, we really didn't have principal and interest paying off on the senior center athletic field and the wastewater projects, probably for another couple of years. But we had a refinancing opportunity where the interest rates were so low, and we had about $8.9 million of debt already on the books that we could refinance. And so I came to the Board of Selectmen, asked if you had an appetite for that refunding, and you said yes. And so I had already borrowed, at that point, $16.5 million in short-term debt, and we were only paying interest on it because we started constructing the senior center and the athletic field. And since the interest rates were so low, and there is a cost to borrowing, we wanted to roll all that in together. It would be a significant saving. So we were able to do that. So we issued $19.5 million in debt, which included the water mains. I didn't have a short-term note out on the water mains. And those are the 4 projects, the senior center, high school, water main, and wastewater projects. And the net interest rate was extremely low, and I think it was 1.9%. It was something crazy like that. And then we saved the taxpayers $200,000 with the Falmouth AAA bond rating. And so the financing plan had to change, and we were able to work that into the budget. And so I was excited that we were able to do that because it was the time to do it. We didn't want to wait another couple of years. You never know what was going to happen with the economy and interest rates.
But just to be clear, it's the 1.3 and the 200.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so we had a savings of the 1.3 due to the refinancing, and then the 200,000 due to the bond rating.
It did mean our bond premiums went down a little bit, but way
Yeah,
not affected by this, which
and
is.
it brings up a really good question, because it got a little bit complicated, and I just want to and talk about that for a second. So when we issued the $19.5 million in debt, we received over a $2 million premium. So what we did is we paid down the principal, so we only borrowed $17.1 million. So we're paying principal and interest on the 17.1, and those are the two different figures. And in the last 5 years, we've incorporated $82.5 million on the water treatment plant in the Little Pond Source Service area. So we've really been able to make a dent in our capital projects. So we had to change the financing plan and then incorporate the savings into the budget. So this budget reflects all of that. There might be some minor adjustments that I'll work through with the Finance Committee as we move forward with this. I just received a comprehensive debt book a couple days ago to make sure that our numbers are in line. So if there's tweaking here and there, but for the most part, everything is in the budget. And then that's our the graph that we do, and that is also in your budget book as well.
We have questions on, still on revenue.
No, sure, go right ahead.
Questions on revenue, do we want to handle those before we move on to
Yeah,
expenses?
absolutely.
On the budget overview we have, there's a column called fiscal year 2020 voted. Is that really for the revenue, is that actually actual or is that voted?
It's what's voted, it's not actual. It's the actual tax levy. It's not the local receipts isn't actual.
Okay.
Those are what was voted, but it is the actual
So for instance,
levy.
the new growth is listed as in fiscal year 20 as 1,093,000.
Yeah, that's the actual number.
That's right.
Yes.
So some of these are actual numbers as
Yes.
opposed to voted numbers. Because then we dropped it down for the recommended down to 700, which has just been conservative. That it's unlikely that our growth is going to decrease from what happened in 2020 to 2021, or?
We hope it doesn't decrease, but we really, because when we balance the budget, it's an estimate, so we want to be conservative, right?
Okay.
And so if you look at the history of new growth, for the first 3 or 4 years when I was here, we estimated at 600,000, and then we had a steady, we were able to look at the past few years, and it had gone up to like 750. So we're comfortably able to estimate 700,000. The year that we just set the tax rate on, this year, it went up a little bit over $1 million. And we want to see a little bit more of a trend before I increase the 700, or recommend to increase the 700,000 to like 750 or 8.
All right, that answers that perfectly. And then also the state revenue, we did receive some MSBA reimbursements in 2020 that we're not expecting to happen again.
That's correct.
And that's the reason why our state revenue funds are down almost $680,000 from what we've experienced in the past.
Yeah, let me explain that. That is actually another great part of this refinancing. So under the old MSBA rules, we would finance a project, the high school.
Pardon, could you interpret that for those people who don't know what MSBA is?
Sure.
I know.
MSBA is the Mass State Building Authority. So when a school can apply to the MSBA, the authority, for grants, and they have to go through an application process. You can do it for minor capital projects, you can do it for major capital projects. The MSBA was overhauled around 2005. So before 2005, if you applied for a grant, I think this was the Mullenhall School, there was a renovation, you would borrow the money, and you'd stop paying back principal and interest, and the MSBA would give you money, your grant, after you had already borrowed, to pay down some of that interest. Then when it was overhauled in 2005, they give you the money as you're building the building, so you don't have to finance it and have the interest, pay the interest on a higher amount, and then you're borrowing less. And so these were the older projects before 2005. One of the things about the refinancing is we had 2 more years on the Mullenhall School. The principal and interest payment was probably like over $900,000. The MSBA agreed to give us 2 years in advance, and so we were able to put it in escrow, and that paid down, and that was part of the refinancing. So the Mullenhall School was paid off, and that's why we're not getting the reimbursement anymore. So that was another great thing that happened with the refinancing that I probably don't talk about as much.
The 2 other questions about whether we want to level fund or level number those were the license and permits that we did have a hearing, which we voted increases on a bunch of them. So we know that there's going to be an increase there, but we're still level funding that one.
Yeah, a lot of times when we increase, say when the water rates, or we increase, fees, especially the smaller fees, it's really hard to project how much that will come up with. So what I like to see is at least a year. So the areas that I did increase the estimated local receipts, I've seen a trend over the last few years of that increasing. But we will definitely take a look at that as that revenue starts to come in.
Basically the same question on the embarkation fees. We know that that's going up because we're having more people come through town.
That's true.
And so it'd be a minor increase that we would
Yep.
see, and probably not worth putting into the books. But at some point, that number should go up from what we're expecting from the Steamship Authority's reimbursement.
Right, so the embarkation fees gets put into another fund, and that gets filtered through the state. The last time I looked, there was a little bit of fluctuation, so we always want to spend what we're bringing in, and that's what we were bringing in. But you're right, it has gone up in the last couple of years. So if we're going to use part of that revenue to support the budget, the embarkation fees, we use to support public safety because of the influx of people into the community, then we'd want to increase that modestly to make sure that we can sustain that amount of revenue. But you're absolutely right, it has gone up in a couple of years, and it'll take a look at, the amount that's there now.
And then this, I think, reiterates what your earlier point, with the loss from the MSBA reimbursement because of our debt refinancing, we are going to have to supplement this budget with about $600,000 from our debt stabilization fund. But because of the refinancing we've done, that makes it, certainly makes sense to do that.
Right, so when you think about it, the appropriation for debt's over here, you had a reimbursement over here.
Right.
The debt went down, the reimbursement went down, right? So we put new debt in here.
Right.
And without the school, but you're right, we'll supplement that with the debt stabilization because we have 2 more years of keeping that steady until we have the major drop-off.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I
So-
ask- Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sue.
So on the, looking at revenues, the short-term rental tax, I know a lot of folks have been talking about, just so it doesn't go into the general fund, looking at special projects, whether it be municipal broadband or housing, getting our housing numbers up from whatever it is now, 6, 8, something like that, up to 10. What would be, so 2 questions, what would be required in terms of policy change, if any, for that to happen, just so folks know? And the other part of that, parallel, the community preservation funds, the fact that the debt is allocated to be paid off, it's similar question. Are there more community preservation funds that are going to be available?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. So with short-term rental tax, we want to see probably a year, you'll probably see some estimates for that in 2022 budget, using that. one thing with the short-term rental tax, we will be sharing that with the school. When we had the increase of the 1% of the hotel motel tax, we allocated $100,000 to the school, so they went up 2.5%, not the 2.3%. So we do want to do, when we had that meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, so that revenue will be shared with the school department. We would make that recommendation. And so that's one thing, so it wouldn't be all of it, what do we, and then you can have the conversation when we figure out the estimates of how much you get. Do you want to allocate that to certain projects or some sort of initiative, which is a great conversation probably for the strategic planning session that you have in June. The other issue is community preservation, and I know, let's talk about is affordable housing, right? So right now with community preservation, because they've set aside the debt, they've actually are discussing, and the article will be probably 1.3 million proposing of community preservation funds to go into the affordable housing fund. And also, as a part of the short-term rental, there is a part of the legislation that can be a community impact fee, and it's up to 3%, and they have just changed the legislation, I believe, last July, and there's only certain types of units you can tax that 3%, and that could be another allocation to affordable housing if the board so wishes. So there is opportunity there.
Sam?
I just want to clarify something that's a little vague to me. I know that if we don't spend allocated money from the operating budgets at the line item, that gets converted over into free cash on the following fiscal year. If we have additional revenues and we don't have those allocated, but we have a net increase, does that additional revenue also get swept into the free cash?
Can you give me an example, like additional, if it's additional general fund revenue, yes. If it's additional other revenue in another fund, no.
Okay, so what happens when it is from another fund? Is that put into a special reserve account?
Like what other fund, like community preservation?
Wetlands.
Like wetlands?
Wetlands, oh, okay, no, it just stays in the fund.
Right.
So there, what's called in, it's in a different fund, it's called a receipt reserve for appropriation account. So that money gets put into that fund, and we cannot spend it unless we have an appropriation at town meeting. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's
It's
good.
easy to do it as we're
No,
going.
I appreciate it, and I love the question, so thank you. All right, so the sources of revenue, this kind of gives you the percentage of what we're looking at, just to get a visual. And then the board has an appropriation policy. It's consistent with the Board of Selectmen's strategic plan, and we continue to use reoccurring revenue to fund the reserve accounts. So budget increases. All right, so when we approach the budget this year, one thing I want to spend a minute on is health insurance. So when I look at the budget, even before we send out the budget memo or before we draft a policy for the Board of Selectmen, we know that we're going to have areas of fixed cost increases, and what does that look like? And so with health insurance, the way we've been budgeting for health insurance, you get spikes and then they go down. So we wanted to have the approach, and we've done this over the last 5 or 6 years, of really a smoothing effect. So we usually allocated, it was easier to allocate maybe 6 or 7%, sometimes 5% to the health insurance budget, instead of trying to find 13% one year and then the next year 2%. And so what we've done is we have a little bit of a budget buffer right there, and so when we close it out at the end of the year, that does get close to free cash. And I don't think we had to do it last year, but you see, we'll move money around, from health insurance. But we want to keep it in there because health insurance is so costly, right? Well, we do have money in the health insurance account, and we're looking at another. Last year, we had a 0% increase, and I believe we requested a 2% increase in the budget. This year, we're looking at most, a 2% increase, which is crazy, but it's great. Our claims are good. We're a member of the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. So this year, for the health insurance, we definitely contain a 0% increase. We don't even, not even with even if it went to 2% or 3%,
Right,
we
we're
will
already
be
there.
fine. The retirement assessment, 6.16%, and I put the numbers up there just to give you an idea. $521,000. The school department, we've allocated some of the additional revenue, about $100 in excess of the 2.3%, at a $1.2 million increase. In Upper Cape, VOTAC right now, I think we have a couple less students go there. However, they're still in the middle of their budget process. That might go down a little bit, but right now I know that it won't be higher, with my conversations with Bob Dutch over there, than the 10%. So where did our budget, what are we looking at increases for this year? Well, first and foremost, as everybody has seen, the new senior center, right? So we've been planning for this for a number of years. And so we did increase the senior service, and we're calling it the senior services. We feel that it's a recommendation that we feel reflects the services that the seniors get in the community. So we're looking for a full-time receptionist, a part-time laborer, a part-time food service worker, and cleaning services. As you know, they're embarking on a food program over there. There's a big commercial kitchen, and they're looking at having a food program. So the rest of the cost of the food program will probably be going through a revolving fund, which will go to town meeting in April. Just get the money in, then we can pay for maybe an additional food service worker and, some of the food. But that's very new. It's a whole new program, so we're gonna tread lightly and see how it works out and try to be flexible with that. We've also are requesting 2 additional police officers effective January 1st and 2 additional firefighters effective January 1st. We have added to the budget over the last 2 to 3 years, additional public safety personnel, and there's an extensive hiring process, and people are leaving and retiring, and we're trying to hire more people. So we feel that making this effective January 1st, because of the lengthy hiring process, isn't gonna be a detriment at all to public safety.
Just to say the obvious, we mean January 1st, 2021.
Yes. And 1 additional clerical position for the health department.
Just quickly before you leave that.
Sure.
By additional safety personnel, you mean beyond the number that's stated now as opposed to filling retiring positions?
Yes, oh yeah, we need additional funding, because people retire, we hire in their place, but with the retirements and people leaving, it creates open positions, and the hiring process is so lengthy, so even the open positions, we're trying to get people in there. It's been difficult, it's been challenging. So we feel, with the effective of the new positions, January 1st, 2021, we'll be just fine.
Maybe is this the right time to ask how many, for both the police department and fire department, how many funded open positions we have right now? That we could, in theory, add 4 more firefighters, 6 more firefighters, but filling them with the numbers we have to open right now aren't there. So maybe if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, to ask, really first Chief Dunn and then Chief Small, how many open positions that we have that are funded that have not been filled yet?
If you want to say it from there, we can re-say it if you don't want to get up. We can have Jennifer repeat it. I don't want to make everyone.
Right now, we have, we're looking to hire 7 right at the moment, and after these 7 are hired, another 4.
So looking for 7.
And these will be in addition, so that would be 4 more on top of that.
And then another 4. And how about any positions, does that include positions that are open because of retirements or transfers?
Haven't even addressed those yet.
Okay, all right, those are new, those are all new. Yeah, okay.
But you need to repeat the answer, because
7, and then after the 7 that are looking to be filled now, there'll be 4 more.
4 more.
And then this would add 2 more to that.
2 more after that.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Chief Small?
We have 1 open position, should be filled shortly.
1 open position should be filled shortly. And did you just have 7 new firefighters hired?
Recruits,
Recruits this year?
More than that,
8 or something, more?
14, I think.
Okay, all right.
5 started today.
Okay, great.
But
That's
those
wonderful.
are,
Brand new.
those are brand new, but they're making up for losses. But we're currently, right now, we have 1 position that's open, and it should be filled relatively shortly.
So 1 open position after 14 new hires. Great, thank you.
And these 2 will be in addition to that.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you.
And additional clerical position in the health department, excuse me. Also, the finance department is requesting a full-time equivalent, And that would be part-time in the treasurer's office to assist with procurement, and then part-time in the assessor's office to assist with property valuation. So that is the request. It's hard not to get into it because I'm the department head, but right now it's an overview. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you.
And also incorporated into this budget is an adjusted wage schedule for seasonal employees. We've adjusted it last year, and we're adjusting it again this year to reflect minimum wage, which kind of increases other positions of other seasonal positions. And it's really been, we did see a positive result last year of being able to hire and retain seasonal positions that is much needed. And we continue that trend. So I think this will definitely be helpful. And also, there was a settlement for AFSCME-A, and there's an adjusted wage schedule after we had a, we went to, it was the November, I believe, 2019 town meeting and asked for some money to do a study and found that we were behind, so we had to adjust the wage schedule. And then there's also additional library hours of operation that we've
For the
incorporated
Sundays?
into the budget, yeah. And one other, I thought of this, and it's not on my presentation, but it is in the budget message. We are requesting a part-time solid waste coordinator as well.
Yes, thank you. I did see that in the budget.
Yeah, and I-
So something that Solid Waste Advisory has been asking
Right.
for, and we've talked about it previously, so that's great.
For some reason, I was driving back here and I just, I don't think I put that in the presentation. So, yes. And then the FY '21 operating budget for visual, those are the percentages. Funding reserves, we're still funding about $1 million allocated to the capital stabilization fund. The general stabilization fund reached its goal in 2019, so we continue to reallocate those original funds to the OPEB and workers' compensation. And so we'll fund all the same trust funds that we've been doing and keeping a healthy reserve.
And I noticed that we're doing the OPEB up the 400,000 we're not putting into the
General
stabilization, we're moving over to OPEB.
Right, it'll be the second year that we're doing that.
I have a question.
Okay.
About the wage schedule adjustment for
Yes.
the seasonal workers. Would we consider that for the police department, seeing as how we're having trouble filling those positions?
For the summer patrol officers?
No, it's for the regular officers.
Well, they're in a different union.
Right, but I mean, what's the mechanism? If we want to consider our standing in the relation to other towns, and we wanted to consider increasing that base pay,
For just,
what would be the mechanism for
for
that?
regular police officers?
Correct.
I'll have Julian answer that
Yeah,
question.
that's really part of the collective bargaining process, so we'd have to open up a bargaining session, sit down, and begin that process going forward. And we're frequently in negotiations with police officers, and that will probably be underway in the not-too-distant future once again.
Okay.
And so, what doesn't have to go to town meeting, we still have to make room for in the budget, if you will, our state assessments and our allowance for abatements. And so that's in the budget overview. And we did, 2 years ago, I believe, the legislature voted, or DOR said we can consolidate our allowance for abatement. So usually we fund it every year, so you would have it for 17, an amount for 2017, 18. Now we can look at it as one, so we're able to decrease that funding just a little bit. And also the state assessments, which you never know what's going to happen with those. Last year, we had a very large increase in our charter school assessment of over $300,000.
And what was the other one, maybe someone remembers, that Vinnie Di Macedo tried to sort of assist, but
Yeah, it was,
we lost, I mean, it was a big
it
chunk
was
of money.
300, it was over 300,000. It was the value of state-owned land.
Land, that's right.
Yeah.
That was a big.
So those are the, we try to make, that's why we want to keep room in the budget, if you will, and we like to try to keep the budget flexible, because these are some of the surprises, like the state budget. They won't, that's not usually a done deal until June, right? So you want to make sure when you set your tax rate, you have room and you have places to go, and that's why we are so conservative. And when we stay conservative and stay with our fiscal policies, we have that room, so we're not like other communities trying to scramble or trying to call a town meeting. But also, when we have that flexibility, we're able to have a healthy free cash to at least fund one-time projects. So in conclusion, the continued increases in public safety positions. As you can see, there's debt management. We look at that all the time and try to, manage our debt with our capital projects. And also, there's continued implementation and further explanation of departmental reorganization and cost-saving measures. That's the conclusion.
Well, thank you so much. Doug?
So the question I have is, where do we go from here? That, as we look at this budget, I think there's some great recommendations made by the departments and by Julian and Jennifer. And if we have issues that we want to change, one of them, and I think in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to be dealing what we do with the West Falmouth Fire Station and the fire department in general, and that's a big one. I think Julian has an answer for that one. But if there's smaller things that we're saying, actually, could we put $20,000 more into that? Do you want us to worry about finding where that comes from, or if we make some suggestions tonight, is it better to put it in your hands, say, either vote for it and I'll find it, or whether increased revenues or someplace else we might be able to trim down?
Well, yeah, you bring up, a great question. We'd like to have the chance to give the recommendation of what the amount is, if you were going to increase the budget like $5,000, I'm sure we'd be able to do something. If you want to increase the budget like $500,000, then, I don't think we'd want to have a discussion of who we're cutting. So, we would like to talk about that in the next week, whatever recommendations you may have, and then we would have a recommendation on how to implement that in the budget next Monday, as you would, hopefully vote the budget and move it on to the Finance Committee.
So just, is that?
I wasn't sure whether on the bigger issue for the West Falmouth.
Well, if I can just jump on the West Falmouth piece.
Please.
I mean, I think just in general, if we can, I know the question that lots of people are asking is, and I'm quite sure whether there's a placeholder that comes from this board or if there's a petitioner's article, I think it's a pretty strong guess that we'll be talking about the possibility of some article addressing additional staffing,
Right.
although it doesn't immediately solve, for reasons that we'll discuss at our community forum, doesn't immediately solve sort of some of the challenges for July. But I'd like to sort of hear from you when we come back at our next meeting, where potentially, if we have an article that goes through town meeting and is voted for 8 more firefighters, where that can come from. Because and how that goes forward. Because
Right.
I think the public, town meeting members and the public really needs to understand the weight of that.
Right.
And how that plays out as the budget as a whole.
No, you bring up a great question, and, I've been involved in some of the, conversations, obviously know what, is being discussed. And, this is an operating budget for the services. The reoccurring revenues, they happen every year. The reoccurring expenses happen every year. There's a lot, I look at the West Falmouth discussion as different. So if you wanted to hire 8 firefighters or something like that, like you just mentioned, would be an override. Because I don't think you want to cut the budget, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some other department. I know maybe you do. You know what I mean?
So what I'm saying is I would love for you to sort of expound on that at our next meeting, because I think that is going to be something we're going to be talking about in the coming months, and we're likely going to be talking about at town meeting. And when we talk about an override, I mean, that's something that I think the town really needs to understand the implications of, and, the value, whether, however people come down on it, really understand what that means. Some people automatically are turned off by that word, and, there's nothing they would vote an override for.
Right.
And other folks maybe don't understand all the implications. So I think it would be helpful, I'm not asking you to do it tonight because we're putting you on the spot, but, just to really have that discussion about the process, and then how that override would sort of impact, your thoughts about how it would impact the town going forward.
And I think we can talk about that specific question without having to impact this budget. So as you look at the budget and everything that's in there and the services that the town provides now, and we could answer any questions or make minor adjustments next Monday, to prepare for a presentation for an override in a week it wouldn't be comprehensive, and it wouldn't be serving anybody anything. So if we can talk about them exclusively, the budget tonight, and then West Falmouth and some of the options or whatever that are on the table separately outside of the operating budget.
Yeah, I think for the 21st, public forum, I think. So, just coming to mind now, because we're talking about the budget, and I think your point is very well made, that it's a discussion outside of this budget, because it would break this budget. It's an override, right, if we're talking about that. So I think it would be helpful to have that, conversation on the 21st, so that people understand that piece of it, because I do think it'll be something we talk about.
Okay.
We'll be prepared for that.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, I have one issue that's kind of bothering me, because I feel like we're not really trying to invest right now to look at this impact, but, I mean, I've been a wash ashore for 29 years in this town, and I've seen the environmental degradation just continue. And yes, we've done some remediation, we've done the Little Pond Sewer Service area, we've improved the wastewater treatment plant, but we're not really seeing any improvements that we can point to that might not just be related to the amount of fresh water from an extra amount of rain in any given year. And then we have the sea level rise impacts. And I know we have a committee that's focused on that, as well as our Water Quality Management Committee. But I just get the feeling that, I'm not gonna be here 20 years from now. And the legacy we're gonna leave our kids, is gonna be a deficit. And I feel like, we just added somebody to coordinate solid waste. Why shouldn't we be investing in somebody that would help us get a better handle on how we can basically preserve and improve the conditions that our children are going to inherit from us, or our grandchildren, our great-great-grand. It's an area that I feel like we're just not taking seriously. And my problem is I see the degradation that's occurred while I've been here in Falmouth, and I don't see that as slowing down.
No, you bring up another great point. I think this comes up a lot, and I think we've done.
It's probably good for our strategic planning.
Oh, there's no question about it.
Exactly. If the Board of Selectmen wants a full-time position dedicated to this, to this cause, if you will, I mean, that's probably not even the right word for it.
Challenge, yeah.
Yeah, the challenge, then that's something that if you discuss in the strategic planning, session, and then we can incorporate it. When we put the budget together, we look at what's in the strategic plan, and we work with department heads, and the department heads usually give us a request, or sometimes after looking at the strategic plan, we tell the department heads, this is what the board is looking at. So it can be, it's a conversation, so we don't have a request in for a full-time position for like coastal resiliency, but if that's something the board really wants us to work into the budget, then it's a great topic for your strategic planning session with that direction.
Yeah. Or, looking at maybe a fund in that way, right? Because, when you have a natural disaster, or we have, not even these bigger ones, but couple of storms we've had this year, it really hits, generally it's DPW that's, dealing with it, but it also hits, the beach department, so kind of across the board,
Right.
We don't really have sort of a emergency fund for those kind of natural disasters or coastal resiliency issues that we know are coming and are going to be pretty regular, that are not small. I mean, sand and beach nourishment and all of that are big ticket items that, yes, we can build them into budgets, but there are also unexpected events that are going to happen that can be total budget busters. It's like when we've have years with banner, snow, and ice, and it's, you hope it's a year that our health insurance fund has been good to us because we have to transfer from it. So, we could I think as a board, think about the ways that we address it and come at it. Yeah, Sam?
I just want to say that we've kind of been relying on volunteers to sort of give us a heads up on what we should expect, be it environmental change, sea level rise and that sort of thing. But that's diffuse. And what I feel like is we need somebody on the staff, not just assigned staff that, Jen McKay is filling on the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee, but somebody that can actually kind of look at paths forward that we can actually take, because it's complicated with all the state permitting. We don't have anybody that's actually taken the responsibility to actually advise us on steps that we can begin to take, and that's the piece that I feel is missing.
Okay.
So I understand that this is something for strategic planning, but by golly, it comes down to the budget, and I don't want us to forget about that.
Thanks, Sam.
And just to take off on the chair's request for some information with respect to the effect of the budget, that the conversation about 8 new firefighters would, affect. I think we have to be prepared to respond to questions about safer grants, about where, is this appropriate for some surplus funds? How various ways it could be done and why it couldn't be done in other ways. So I think it's going to be, an overview, but also probably at least a 15-minute presentation.
Just as you finish this one, we're giving you another one for the 21st. So, any other questions about this particular budget?
I have specific line item questions I don't think for
Yep.
Jennifer, but would be for either department heads or going through. And I think I may be repeating what the finance committee members will do also, but.
They'll let you do that, I bet. They'll allow you that leeway to do it. Julian, did you want to make any other comments about this presentation?
No, other than, again, to thank the board for your attention to this presentation, and all my colleagues here as department heads for their diligent work in bringing this forward and answering questions, including the ones that are yet to be forthcoming.
Thank you. And these really get better every year. I think, maybe I missed this last year, but it's just sticking out to me. But really having a visual about how the department breaks down and flows, I think is really helpful. And just, the detail has gotten to be, I think, just more useful and precise each year. So thank you. It really makes something that can be daunting a much easier task to engage in. And hopefully, when is this on our website yet?
Not yet. I want to be presented to the board first.
Okay.
We'll put it up tomorrow.
Will be,
Great.
yes.
So I encourage folks, to take a look at it, even just the message in the front and the first couple of graphs to really get an idea of what we're looking at. And then we'll wait for once we vote on it, we can wait for input from Finance Committee, which is always helpful. But it's very user-friendly, so thank you for everybody who put it together.
And I want to second that and thank everybody that contributed to it, because it's an impressive document, and it really does give us the foundation that you're recommending to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all the department heads.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Okay.
And some of the questions I have are not that I'm questioning the logic of it. I'm looking for an explanation so that everyone can know why we're doing it. And one of them, for instance, has to do with the conservation, that we have some increases there. I'd love to figure out, so many people know what we're trying to do in that. So the first is under the town meeting. We're increasing our advertising by almost 20% or 100% from what it was in the past. I just wanted to know it's only an $8,000 increase, but percentage-wise, it's
Excellent
significant.
question.
If you don't mind, I know
Fair
you
on
want to
that one.
ask the department heads. I know Michael Palmer, I don't believe, is here this evening, but I can tell you why we've made some of the recommendations, and then maybe the department heads can fill it in if that's okay, because I do have the answer to that question. So with the Charter Review Committee, we have a requirement of having to print town meeting, the articles and the recommendations, which take up a whole page in the enterprise. And there were some times that they would give it to us at no cost. But the Charter Review made it a mandatory recommendation. They kept it in there. So we want to make sure we have the money in the budget, because there was a couple times that it was missed in the enterprise, but we really couldn't say anything because they didn't charge us for it. So we want to make sure we pay for it and we get that recommendation in the newspaper. So that's why it went up so much.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next one, of course, is the elections are going up 15%, but that's because we have an election this year.
Exactly.
The increase of the conservation is about 30,000. Is that for half a position, or is that, it looked like
No.
it was within the salaries that was happening?
Yeah, I will tell you that we had, you'll see percentage increases and you'll see the percentage will be larger for a smaller department.
Yep.
But a lot of this are your step increases plus the AFSCME adjustment and the settled contract.
Okay.
Now, when we don't have a settled contract for the year before, it really looks like a huge jump. You'll see that in the fire department. This is the first time we had, we vote the COLA article separately, so we're able to transfer that in. And then the first year, because we do the budget, how much in advance, it will look like a big jump.
So it's not an increase in position in either conservation?
Not in the conservation
or
department,
in
no.
the
We
buil-
increased that last year.
Or in the building inspectors also had the same kind of an increase?
Right, yep, no increase in the building department.
And of course, the senior center is a substantial increase,
Yes,
as we would expect it to be. And the health department, you said we're adding a new official there.
that's correct.
Clerical position in health.
Okay. And that we are seeing a bit of an increase in both the recreation and the beaches department, which I think is something that this board has been supportive of, seeing those increases being substantially higher than maybe some of the other departments because of the need.
Seasonal.
And that's
We
a
needed to
seasonal
increase the
adjustment, yeah.
seasonal wages.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other specific questions at this time?
No.
For Jennifer, or any of the department heads? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess I now will reiterate my move to adjourn. Maybe I'll get a second this time.
Well, do we need to actually vote this?
No, not till next week.
One week,
that's right.
one
So we
weekend.
vote it
Excuse
at
me.
our next meeting, then we transmit it to Finance Committee. I'm gonna just make an executive decision, unless any selectman really wants to say something for this week that we didn't have meetings. Other than congratulations to Sam's son, who got married a couple days after Christmas, so that's wonderful. Any other significant reports? Okay, have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That is a